Hey everybody, welcome back to the Learn with Hack the Box series here on this channel. My name is Jake, and if you didn't see the video before this, I highly recommend you go back and watch that before you watch this one. In that first one, we talked a lot about the skills that are necessary to get into red teaming and into the offensive security field, as well as kind of laying out a study guide / study plan and some basic modules that you can cover on Hack the Box Academy to build up this skill repertoire that we're going to be proceeding today with. Now, today's topic is actually going to be over using the tool Nmap. Now, you probably hear Nmap all the time. Pen testers talk about it. Everybody uses Nmap that's in the offensive security field. Even defensive security professionals use Nmap because it's such an important topic and it's an important tool. But before we get into the actual content on Nmap, I'm going to kind of proceed as if you've gone over the Introduction to Networking module on Hack the Box Academy. If you're starting from scratch, I would really recommend that you maybe pause the video here and go through that module first, because it's great supplemental knowledge before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of what Nmap is and how it actually operates as a tool and why it's important. Now let's get into the juicy stuff. What is Nmap? So Nmap as a word is actually just two words smushed together. It's network and map. And you put those together, you get Nmap. Now, why is that important though? So Nmap is a tool that we can run from the command line that basically allows us to get a better picture of what kind of applications or services exist on our target before we just go willy-nilly trying to attack it. Now, if you can think of where this exists in the actual pen test process, if you are given a machine, a target machine, and somebody says, now show me how it's vulnerable. Well, there's a lot of different ways, and there's a lot of different things that you could even check. But if we can paint a more targeted picture of what kind of services or applications might be on a machine, then we can approach it in a more targeted and efficient manner. Now, to give you an idea of just how big that attack surface is for every single machine and why Nmap is important, we're going to dive into the idea of ports, and ports are basically where a application or a service sits on a machine. Now, on any given target machine, or just any computer in general, there are the possibility of 2 to the 16 number of ports. Now, that kind of roughly comes out to 65,500 different ports that applications or services could run on. And I don't know about you, but to me, that sounds like it would be a pain to do manually. So to help you understand this idea, I'm going to pull up a handy dandy little notepad, and you're going to get some great illustrations by yours truly. So let's assume that we have our own little computer here where we're going to be running Nmap off of. So this is our PC, and we have a target kind of server that we want to attack. And this is a super accurate, beautifully drawn server. This is what they look like in real life, I promise. Now, when we want to communicate to that server, like I said, that it needs to have an IP address so that we can locate where this server is and what computer or server we're trying to talk to. For this case, let's just assume that this server is 1.1.1.1. Okay, so our computer reaches out and it says, hey, I want to talk to 1.1.1.1, but now I need to know what port to communicate on. And these ports are basically like little doors on the machine, and they act as a window for you to communicate to a specific service, right? So Nmap, when it reaches out, it basically will try to reach out on each port and iterate over the ports and see if when it knocks on the door, if that door opens up. Okay, well, this door opens up, and maybe it says, hey, I have a web server on this particular port. Some of them might not open up, and that's fine. But basically out of this door comes back a response to our machine. And Nmap does that for all of the ports or a subset of common ports that, the services might most likely be on, to try to understand what services or applications might exist on this target server. And that's basically the premise of what's happening underneath the hood when you're running Nmap, which will be really important as we see Nmap scans being ran, what exactly that output means. And this is essentially what it means. Now that we have taken a look at what is under the hood in an Nmap scan, we talked about what an Nmap scan is, I think it's about time that we dive into showcasing the basic anatomy of an Nmap scan and see some hands-on demo style of what an Nmap scan looks like. But before we do that, I do want to emphasize one thing. So when I teach people that are getting into security, I always like to tell them that, tool fatigue is real. And it seems like a lot of security practitioners just have, a lot of syntax for a lot of different tools just memorized off the top of their head. And some of that does come with experience, but memorizing the syntax of a tool isn't as important as understanding the options that a tool gives you and how a tool actually operates. So you don't want to focus on the syntax of the command as I showcase some of the anatomy of this Nmap scan, rather how you can customize the Nmap scan to do what you want to do. Just remember that syntax can always be Googled. But as we get in here, I'm going to flip over to a terminal. I do have a Hack the Box pwn box pulled up here so that we can just quickly, do some scanning on a Hack the Box machine. I chose an old retired Hack the Box machine called Jerry for this, but the actual machine doesn't actually matter. You can use any machine. In fact, I would probably encourage you to use one of the starting point machines on Hack the Box. I think that's a great way to practice some Nmap scanning and not necessarily get an overwhelming amount of output, as well as doing the network enumeration with Nmap module on Hack the Box Academy. That's a fantastic place to kind of take what we're going to learn here and, continue and do a deeper dive on some of those options that exist inside of Nmap. But for this case, I want to show you kind of some of the basics of an Nmap scan. So this could really be about a half an hour of me just showcasing all of the different types of options that are available to you, but I want to show you a basic Nmap scan that I would run and just kind of build up and explain it as I build it. Now, if you want to run Nmap on any system that it's installed, you just type Nmap followed by, believe it or not, you could just run it with the IP address of your target. But we're actually going to do a couple more customization options first. So you start with Nmap, end with your target IP address. But I like to throw a couple things in the middle here. So one of the first things that I always like to do is capital P lowercase n. So dash capital P lowercase n is a flag that you can enable here that I like to think of as no ping. I know that's backwards, but I like to think of it as no ping because that's exactly what it does. It skips the pinging of the target that you specify, because it does that to see if that target is alive. So by specifying no ping, you say, hey, you can just skip pinging this host because I know it exists on the network. Just kind of keeps things moving a little bit faster if you know a host is alive on the network. Now, the next option that I like to run is the dash capital T and then a number, but the dash capital T stands for throttle. So this is about the speed of the scan. So it's dash capital T and then 1 through 5, 5 being the fastest, 1 being the slowest. Sometimes you need to do this because of potential speed network latency issues. Most of the time it's between like speed and accuracy if you're going too fast. I've found for most of the Hack the Box machines and most of the machines that I've tested professionally that -T4 is a great middle ground for keeping the speed moving while also maintaining accuracy. So that's one that I like to throw in there. Now, without making this too overly complex, I think another really critical set of commands that we're going to smush together is dealing with grabbing extra information from the server. Now, the first one that you'll see is -S_V. Now, this is for version scanning. It basically tries to pull the version of a service from the server. So when Nmap goes and knocks on those port doors, it tries to determine, based on that response, if it can get the actual version of that service. Now that's important because sometimes there are CVEs or vulnerabilities that are related to a very particular version of a service that's running, and that's great information to have. So -S_V is an important one. Now, another one that you'll see is -S_C. Now, this is basically the same thing as version scanning, but it does standard scripts. So Nmap has a scripting engine called Nmap Scripting Engine, or NSE. It determines what service is running on a port, or tries to determine what service is running on a port based on that response, and then it'll run a couple of scripts or further enumeration scripts on that service to see if it can gain any additional information. Now, here's a nifty little thing that'll make you look like a hacker. Nmap actually supports smushing certain flags together. So one that I always use as shorthand is the -S_V. You can actually smush -S_V with -S_C, and you can just do -S_VC, and it makes it a lot cleaner and simpler because these can get really out of hand. So this is basically a really simple Nmap kind of command that I would build, and we'll run this and jump over to the output here in a second to kind of go through what the output of this scan would look like. Okay, awesome. So this finished, and this is kind of a good basic scan here that's going to showcase some of these flags that I was just talking about and see how this all ties together. So the basic response or output from a scan is always going to be the port. So what port it scanned, and whether that was on TCP or UDP, what the state of that port is. For now, we'll just focus on open and closed ports. I think the Nmap module that I mentioned a minute ago actually does a fantastic job of talking about, what filtered might look like, but you might see filtered here. I think that's just slightly outside of the scope of what we're talking about now. The service, so what the application or the service is, or the protocol that's supported there. In this case, it's an HTTP server. And then the version of that service. So in this case, the actual service name or the service version is Apache Tomcat, in this case Coyote, it's JSP Engine 1.1. That's great information to know. Now, that is a result of running the SV portion of our scan up here. And what you'll see is below that, we actually have additional information that was returned by different types of scripts. And that's the C portion, or that -SC portion. In this case, it tries to determine what the fave icon is of the website, which actually happens to be this little Hack the Box logo, or this logo of any website you visit. It actually got the HTTP title from that website. So in this case, it's Apache Tomcat 7.0.88. That's a little bit non-standard to have the actual service version in the HTTP title. So this is great information it's returning us. We got the exact version of Apache Tomcat that it's running. And then the server header. So the actual server header response, we get Apache Coyote 1.1. So we know a lot of information just simply from scanning this, and we know when we connect to the application, if we wanted to actually work on moving from enumeration with Nmap to exploitation, that we would connect to this specific IP address over this port to try to see if we can interact with this in any way, shape, or form. Now, really the last piece here is you're thinking, okay, this output's great. I actually understand the output now, but what if I want to, move away from this? Or maybe I want to run another tool. In this case, it looks like it's potentially a website. There's a lot of other website enumeration tools that I want to run, but I don't want to lose this. Well, you're thinking the right thing. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can save the output of an Nmap scan, but typically, I think the -O capital N or -o capital N, which is the normal output, is the easiest way to digest it in notes. But I do want to point out that there are other ways to save it, such as XML is a popular one. There's a lot of different other formats that you can save it in for parsing or digestion into other tools, but I want to showcase that really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the terminal, and then we'll just quickly drop the IP address in here really quick. If I still have it copied, I do, and then I'll show you how you can do that. So what you would save this as, or what you would write in, is -capital N is for normal, output to normal mode, and then the path that you want to save it to. So in this case, you could save it to some sort of scan. Let's just say Jerry Nmap scan. And then you could write that to a text file. So if you were to scan this, you would actually see this saved into your text file for output here. But that's kind of the basic anatomy of a Nmap scan, and I think the next step we'll take here is to dive deeper into some of the specifics of a Nmap scan and see how we can potentially spice our scans up and do some more tricky things here. So for the last portion of this video, I really want to take the time to show you how you can get a little bit fancy with Nmap and try to get additional information out of services. I think this functionality is definitely overlooked and a lot of people don't use it to its full potential. So like we saw with the scripting on the last scan that we ran, it was -s that basically semi-intelligently tries to run basically just standard scripts based on what the service that's detected is. Well, if we went back to our scan, we would actually see that the service is an HTTP proxy, which means that we're dealing with some sort of HTTP server. So that's good information to know. Now, Nmap actually ships with a bunch of different scripts installed. I'm talking like a bunch. Like if we were to list these out, and these are always, at least on the Pwnbox and on Kali Linux, it should by default be installed at user share nmap and then scripts, and it's just a directory full of scripts. It ships with about 600 different scripts, which is a lot. You can get a lot of information that way. In fact, if I were to pipe this command, basically the results of that directory into the word count command, so send that output into the word count command, we would see that there is just about 600 different scripts, which is a lot. So let's take advantage of those and see what we have available to us. So I'm going to pull this command back up, but instead of saying, hey, here's all the results for the scripts, let's count them, I'm going to use a utility called grep. Now, grep is basically just a way to filter your results on a keyword. So we have 600 results worth of script names, but we only want to match on a couple of different keywords or a single keyword. In this case, I'm trying to pick something that was unique about the output. So we know that it's an HTTP server and it was running Apache Tomcat. All three of those are great keywords to refine your searches to see what scripts you have available to you. In this case, I know that I want to look for HTTP scripts, so I'm just going to start with HTTP, and there's actually quite a few of these you can see. So I'll show you a little trick if you wanted to do a more robust scan, but I'm going to point out one that I always like to use here. So the one that I always like to use, I just think it's really consistent, is this HTTP-enum. Now, if you actually wanted to run all of these HTTP scripts, I'll show you how you can do that. But I'm first going to show you how to build the command to pick your script of choice. So you basically started out the same way, except for when I go to run a script, I want to run the script against a very particular port. So you have to do the -p, and then our port that the service was running on was 8080. Now we need to denote the script that we're going to run, and you do that with -- the word script, and then equals the name of the script that you want to run. I want to run the HTTP-enum script, which I'm just going to surround in quotation marks here for 1 second. You don't actually have to surround this in quotation marks for this to run normally, but I'm going to show you a trick. So you know how we just saw all of those different HTTP scripts? There was a lot, right? You can actually run all of those all at once with the wildcard match. So all of these were prefixed with HTTP and then the dash. If you provide this star, which acts as a match everything else kind of key there, it'll say, hey, I'm going to run all of the scripts that start with HTTP-, which was a whole lot. We don't necessarily need all of that information right now. I'm just going to use the HTTP-enum for our purposes, but this is basically enough to start to build our script enumeration here. So we'll go ahead and we'll run this once we grab our IP address, and I can jump back with you in 1 second once this command is done running. Okay, and now this is done running, and you can already see how much more information this is giving us. This is allowing us to gain a lot of information just passively about the application. These scans take a second to run. You can be doing other things in the meantime, but if we take a look, you can see that the HTTP-enum scripts contents are all contained by these pipe characters here. So this is pointing out different paths that exist on the actual web application, or the HTTP server. So it looks like there's an examples directory, there's a manager HTML upload directory, which is interesting. It even tells us that, you know, from an unauthenticated perspective, we can't quite reach that. We're unauthorized. There's things that you might be able to check out there anyways. And same with the HTML directory, even kind of taking one step up from that upload directory. And then there's also a /docs directory. And it even tells you that that might have potentially interesting information inside of it. So just off of running this one enum script, we already have 4 different endpoints on that actual HTTP server that might be of interest to us. And this is really helping us hone in on exactly where we might be able to attack this machine from an attack surface perspective. Because if you think back to the beginning of this episode, all we had was the IP address of the target and 65,000 different ports that services might have been running on, with who knows how many possible services on any one of those ports. So this is actually a very, very closed-in target path for how we might be able to approach attacking this application simply from using the scripting engine on Nmap. And that actually is going to wrap up our brief introduction to Nmap for the day. So if you enjoyed the content, be sure to check out all the other videos that are being published in the Learn with Hack the Box series here. We even have a parallel series running from the blue team perspective, which is also fantastic insight. You can go ahead and check out my YouTube channel as well. That's Finding Your Password on Twitter. or on Twitter and on YouTube. But I hope you enjoyed the content, learned a little bit about Nmap. If you want to take this a step further and really explore some of the nuances of Nmap, I think that network enumeration with Nmap module on Hack the Box is a fantastic way to continue your learning journey from here. All right, thanks guys. Look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.